let's talk about everything that's going on with the front of the machine. We'll start over here. This is the reverse button. As you're sewing, you're going this way, right? The fabric's going that way. If you need to back stitch, you would hold this down, and while you hold it, you press the foot pedal. Ooh, forgot it was on, it works. So maybe you can see, we'll turn that down, so like, you can see the way that the feet dogs are going, and my foot's on the pedal, and now I'll hold the reverse button. Now they go the other way. Now they're going forward again, backwards. But the reason you want to use this reverse button is for back stitching. Basically, that's it. Some machines, if you hold this down long enough, you'll see this little U-turn shape. You'll see a U-turn show up on here, and that means it's in permanent backstitch mode, which means you can take your finger off, and if you press the foot pedal, it'll still go backwards. And so some people get confused. They're like, why is my machine stitching backwards? It's because this was in the permanent set mode. So how to fix that is you just press it again and hold it until that little U goes away. I don't have one, but that happens sometimes. Okay, now let's go over here. This is the speed control. So plus means faster, minus means slower. You can control the max speed that your machine can. So you can control the speed with your foot pedal. See, that's going pretty slow, and then if I put my pedal to the metal, it goes faster. But I can increase the maximum speed by going towards the plus, or minimize the maximum speed by going towards the minus. So here it is, pedal to the metal. Wow, it's still really fast on the minus. I don't know if I want to go to the top. Let's see. Wow! Yeah, it's much faster. So if you're feeling a little nervous, just push that all the way to the edge, and then still use a gentle foot as you start to sew. Okay, let's go over here. This button is the needle up and down button. Check out this little picture here. So right now, what this indicates is every time I stop sewing, my needle is going to go back to the up position. So here I am sewing, and I took my foot off, and it ends up. If I hold this down, now I changed that preset, and now watch, I'm sewing, and when I take my foot off, the needle ends down. It's nice to have the needle end down when you want to do something like pivot your fabric, but it's nice to have it end up when you're done, right? So then you don't have to hand wheel it yourself. You can also press this button. Oh, on some machines, you can press this button. I wonder if it'll work if my pressure foot's down. Can I do that? Nope, okay. So you can press this on some. If I just press it once, then my needle would pop up, or vice versa. If I pressed it, my needle would pop down. My machine, it's only when you finish, right? So now I put it back to up, and I sew, and my needle ends up. Let's go into these buttons over here. So this controls the stitch width, so it can go, narrow to wide, zigzag. This controls the needle placement, and I'll demonstrate all these in a minute. And then this controls the thread length, the stitch length, I should say. You have small, and then it can go up to big, like the picture shows. So what happens, well, let's watch the computerized screen. So right now, my stitch length is about a 2.5. That means 2.5, like each stitch is 2.5 millimeters long. If I increase my stitch length, now my stitch length is about 4 millimeters long. I'm going to bring it back down to 2, and here's something nice about my machine. It blinks where the default is, and that default position is where you want to do most of your regular sewing. So I took it back there, and then if I change the width, check out this over here. Right now it's at a 0, which means I'll be sewing in a straight line. If I increase this, then now it's up to 1. That means that my stitches will go back and forth at 1 millimeter width. So let's watch the needle while I do this. Right now the needle is in this very center, and now I'll show you over here. I'm pressing this, I'm increasing the width. So I'm increasing the width, and you'll see that my needle is bumping over because it needs to, start over here so it can go back and forth. I'll sew a little bit for you, or make the needle move a little bit. You see how it's jumping back and forth? That's what the stitch width controls. Okay, let's bring it back down to 0 to show you the next thing. So now it's back in the center. You probably heard that. This last one, the needle position. So that you can tell right here. I'll show you it up here first. So I can change where my needle starts. Okay, so it's back in the center. Let's watch the needle while I do it. I'm bumping my needle to the right side right now. Bump, 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 bump. It can bump over 4. And now I'm going to sew for you. Because the width is still at 0, my needle doesn't move back and forth. It still sews straight, but it's in a totally different position. Now I'm going to bump it back to the center, and now I'm going to bump it to the left. Same deal. It's just sewing straight though because my width didn't change. So one reason you might want to use this is if you are edge stitching, and you'll learn that more about edge stitching, but let's say that, well, when you stitch, when it's in the center, the stitch line matches up with this groove on the presser foot. So let's say that you have your fabric in here, and a previous stitch line is right in the center, and you want to stitch a new line, just inside of that. That's called edge stitching. But like I said, we'll learn that later. But instead of having to scoop my fabric over, I could just scoop my needle over, and then I could like bump it 2 spots to the middle, and then it'll do a line just to the side for me. But I could keep that other one lined up with the center so it stays straight. And yeah, that's one way you could do it. I'll explain that better when we actually learn about edge stitching. Don't worry about it too much, but that's why and how you can control your needle placement. Okay, there's just a couple more parts we need to talk about. And the machine has more parts than the things I've been telling you about. Like over here is a little knife you can cut your thread on. These are different like fancy stitches, but for the purpose of getting to know the machine generally, we're only talking about the ones on the notes guide sheet that I gave you. But this is one that I wanted to mention again. This is the take-up lever. It's important, especially once the machine is threaded. The thread comes through here, and it helps take it up and down. I'll show you as I press the foot pedal. It goes up and down. It makes the needle go up and down. It's also controlled by the hand wheel, like we said. And remember, always turn the hand wheel towards you when you thread, and I'll mention this in the threading video, but you need to make sure that the take-up lever is all the way at the top. Okay. Then the other thing I wanted to mention was, so we talked about this bobbin. This is the bobbin case. So this is what your bobbin sits in when you actually sew. We'll talk, again, I keep saying this, but we'll talk about it more when we thread the machine, but I just wanted to show you. So the bobbin goes in the bobbin case, and it gets threaded a certain way, but I'll show you that later. And then it goes into the arm of the machine, this part, sometimes called the arm of the machine with its own little arm pointing up and towards the center, and this little lever guy, this has to be horizontal with the ground. So I stick it in here, and you'll hear a click. Let's see. There you go. You push it until it clicks. And then you can see horizontal up towards the center. And then to release it, you pull this little lever, and it pops right out. Try not to force it, because you don't want to break this. It's expensive, and if you break it, you buy it. Don't try to put this in upside down, whoops, or backwards, something like that. Just put it in with the arm up and the lever horizontal, parallel to the ground. Okay, those are all the parts that we need to go over. If you have questions, you can email me, you can ask me in class, but hopefully this gives you a good overview of the sewing machine.